Well, thanks for doing this. So I recently listened to a podcast, and it made a point at that possibly the most significant person that ever walked the earth, with the exception of Christ, that impacted the future of our world was Winston Churchill. And they made a point about how this could have been a very, very different world if Winston Churchill had not done certain things, both in England and in terms of his relationship with America and FDR.
Right.
And they talked about how he was always very straight with people, and he was very, positive, but at the same time would never sugarcoat it. So it made me think about, I've been thinking a lot about my own role in, running a firm and trying to provide leadership to our clients. And I was curious about how, have you seen any adjustments in yourself in how you're dealing with issues like your clients and things like that?
No, I don't. So in some ways you've got to be like, we do these all hands calls with all our employees twice a week. We were doing them 3 times a week. Now we're doing them twice a week. Staff seems to be pretty good. They're in a good place. They're very productive. They're actually working very hard. We actually 3 weeks ago, I think we gave them an extra 3 days of paid time off for this year. Hopefully they'll be able to use it. But I think that, you can't, as a leader, you can't kind of let your guard down. You may have some blue days, but you can't, on those calls, you've got to be upbeat, you've got to be positive. And I think that's probably not any different than any other day. Although sometimes, when we're all when we meet on Mondays all together physically, except for our offices around the country, maybe sometimes you'll let your guard down there, but not during these times, and trying to keep everybody's spirits up.
How about dealing with clients?
Clients, it's funny. Clients just really want to talk, and they don't necessarily want to talk about markets. I sometimes have trouble getting hold of clients. All of a sudden they're picking their phones up because they're stuck in one place. And so I've had some actually delightful conversations with clients, and again, not about markets, but just about life, and they need to talk, and that's fine. But I don't think there's any difference with clients. Now we're starting to go over first quarter results, which aren't the greatest, but if you run forward and you take the month of April, where we had such a big recovery, the numbers don't look so bad, but it's still a few tough conversations here because, frankly, in the terms of the bond market, the bond market was in chaos in the middle towards that 3rd week of March, and once the Federal Reserve stepped in, things kind of normalized. But in our business, if a bond trades at a certain price and then doesn't trade again, you've got to take that mark at the end of the month, and you've got to use that in the statements. So some of the statements don't look good for the bond, on the bond statements. So those have been tough conversations, but I think, the way we invest, it's preservation of capital first, where I'm not worried about, these bonds and the fact that, they've been marked down, but there's still value there, and they're not, whatever government entity or whatever it is not going out of business.
Yeah. So, I know you have intimate relationships with certain charities and institutions, and I just want you to just talk a little bit about what you're hearing from them, what they're looking to you for, money aside, but because I know you've served as board members, you are on the board of other institutions. What do you see your role in relationship to the CEO, you're reaching out to them, they're reaching out to you. How has that been going?
I mean, look, it's a for, well, I'm involved in a couple of things. So Morristown Hospital is one place that I'm involved in. We continue to see generosity from people too. We have an effort to help our first line responders, the nurses, the staff that are coming to the hospital every day. And people have been very generous supporting that fund. But they don't live hand to mouth. Now, Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Newark and Jersey City, which I chair, we live hand to mouth, unfortunately. And it's been a little bit tough, and we've had to ask the board to step up, and we've had to make some outgoing calls to people. One of the other nice things is some of the local charities like Victoria Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson's reached out to us and said, "Hey, how are you guys doing? And could you use some help?" Which was really comforting to see. And we're hoping to get some money out of the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund. So we'll see, but we have an application in at this point.
Were you eligible for PPP money?
Yes, we were, and we got it already.
Okay.
So that helped too.
That's great. And I also know Bonnie's, they're in a campaign. How are things going there?
I think it's slowed down a little bit, but I don't really have my finger on the pulse of that. I just gave them a big donation myself. So, I know they're happy with that, but in terms of fundraising, I know they've got a couple of big asks out, but I don't know where those stand right now.
Have you, Les, have you found yourself at all philosophical about what's going on? It's been, we all have our moments where we're saying, we went through 9/11, we went through the Great Recession, went through Superstorm Sandy, all those things, all those things that impacted the greater New York area. But I don't think, I used to talk to my sons about their businesses being recession proof, but guess what? They're not recession proof, So, but have you had any kind of thoughts that you want to share about the whole experience?
No, I know, George, I mean, after being in my late 60s, you've seen these crises, from, Black Monday in 1987 to, as you said, the Great Recession, the, Superstorm Sandy, the 01-02 tech bubble. We come through these things. People get very emotional, and certainly this is with people dying, and this thing, it's not financial. It's people's lives, which can be very emotional. But I think to a degree this has been overdone in terms of I think shutting the economy down there are long-term repercussions on that are going to reverberate for a long time, even longer than some of these lives we've lost. I think there's domestic violence, there's, substance abuse, alcohol abuse. And I think just kind of almost a PTSD thing where people just have been forced to sit, and people like to work. I mean, they like that routine, and they've really been thrown off. And so I think there'll be mental health problems going forward. But, all that said, and it sounds very negative, but I do think that the spirit of Americans is really going to prevail here, and we will come out of this and be stronger.
It's interesting. There's been the whole issue of the political leadership. The good, the bad, and the ugly. There's been the medical leadership that we have, and there's a business leadership. And there, it's kind of interesting because there was no real playbook for this.
Yeah.
Even though I think a case could be made that there were some prep done previously to this administration, but regardless, I don't think anybody ever saw or anticipated the extent of what we're dealing with now. But you just raised an interesting point. Would it have been a better approach to have a convergence of commerce, politics, and medicine to think critically about this? And maybe some of the things that you just raised could have been at least considered.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think
it's Monday morning quarterbacking, but it's just.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, I was reading a report last night that one of our managers sent out that kind of took all the facts around COVID-19 and talked about Europe and some of the different approaches that some of the countries have taken over there. And while the death rate is still high, people are living, quote unquote, a normal existence. But with social distancing, with I mean, things have changed. This is our 9/11 of health and healthcare, and it's life has changed forever, really. I mean, we're going even when we get a vaccine, I think life will have changed for a lot of people, and they're going to be a lot more careful about, whether it's wearing masks or social distancing, or are we going to shake hands again? I mean, things like that. Things are normal, and we'll look back and say, wow, that was a quaint custom, I think.
Yeah.
But
the last topic before I let you go, and again, I really appreciate you doing this, is our church. What's your sense about how the church has responded during this time? Do you have any feeling about that?
I think I mean, look, Catholic Charities has certainly stepped up, but I don't see a lot of outreach. I've talked to our pastor about, maybe we should be broadcasting. We can't broadcast. We won't, after things calm down and we go back to normal. Will we, would we be well served by broadcasting prayer services, Stations of the Cross, adoration, so to include more people.
Are they doing a virtual mass?
Yeah, we're live streaming a mass on Facebook every Sunday at 10 o'clock. But I'm not convinced. I think some of these pastors are like deer caught in the headlights, and then there are others that are really, really good at this. But I really haven't seen the church rise up on this one. So
yeah, it's I heard some, without naming anyone, I heard some statements from different bishops in New Jersey about they said, we're not going to ask for money, and I just think that's the wrong message, because the needs, you have a mission, a ministry, and so much of that is fueled by stewardship, by philanthropy. And to say, are we saying it's not important enough? And I'm not saying that people should not support the first responders, or not support COVID-19 charities if they want, but they still have to think about their own charities. We've been fortunate, Les, we're not getting a lot of new business, but we've been fortunate that a lot of our clients, I would say no one has stopped working with us. A couple out of like 30 have put a little bit of a halt on things, but which is expected. And we just had a situation the other day. One of our clients in New York asked for an in-person meeting. So
really,
wow. And then we've been working with them on Zoom, but they asked for an in-person meeting, and the person who's handling the account came to me and said, "Would you mind if I did it?" And I said, "It's your call. If you feel comfortable with a mask," I said, go ahead. And so he's going to. It's on Thursday, which it's kind of a little silver lining here, just something very small.
Yeah.
but it's certainly, to me, it was kind of uplifting, in a way.
Yeah, we need to listen. Eileen and I were out walking 2 weeks ago, and one of the neighbors was in her driveway pulling things out of her car. And we stopped and stood and talked for about 20 minutes. And we walked away, and Eileen said, gee, it's so nice to talk to, somebody outside of our house. Maybe it's me. I mean, but
Yeah.
we need that. We're social animals. We need that interaction. And maybe that's some of that need, is that client calling and saying, let's go. But back on asking for money, our pastor sent a letter, I think after 2 weeks, and said, hey guys, we still have this plant, we still have this church, property to maintain. And yes, and we do have outreach social ministries that we need to keep up. So, please don't forget your church here. Great, as you said, give to the pandemic relief, frontline workers and all that. But, we still have to take care of this, this physical church we have. So,
Yeah. So, well, look, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time.
You're welcome.